My name is Sheila Warren. I am the head of blockchain and distributed ledger technology at the World Economic Forum. So build with, not for is a term that comes both from the civic tech community, but also from the human-centered design community. And the basic idea behind it is spend a lot more time than we ordinarily do thinking about how you include the community that you're aiming a technological intervention at from the jump. So from the very beginning, how are you incorporating the views of that community into your processes, your assumption set, and allowing them to challenge the perspective that you're bringing to the table as the builder. So with blockchain, what's interesting is that the very premise of the technology is one of decentralization and democratization. So in theory, we're actually able to include more voices in the community, and for that matter, also reduce financial inequality by providing access to capital and to wealth to a larger variety of people. But the reality is, like I said in my talk, we have empowered certain people in society to be our risk takers, to be our flag bearers, our torch bearers of new technologies. And that isn't necessarily a bad thing, but the consequences are that whatever biases, whatever perspectives that group brings to the table are reflected in the technology. And because we're so early on, it is our responsibility to think about who's not in the room, whose voices are not being included, and include them to the extent that we can, or at the very least, acknowledge the limitations and set up processes so that downstream, we can actually incorporate those views at a time when we're able to do that in a more effective and efficient manner. So one of the things about the forum is because we're not bound by the need, by funders who want to see us move really fast and immediately have an MVP, that kind of thing, we have the ability to take on this giant lift and create these very inclusive communities. So for example, in our ports project, we are bringing together all the members of a stakeholder community at a port and thinking about what are the ways that if we transform this entire operating system using blockchain, we're going to have consequences for all these what do they perceive as the stakeholder effect, right? Not just our assumptions about what that will look like. So it involves a lot of education of the community. It involves a lot of listening, a lot of conversation and dialogue among parties that don't often play well together, but something the forum is very good at doing. But make no mistake, it is laborious, painstaking, sometimes emotionally exhausting work. So with port, I think one of the biggest problems with ports is it's kind of like what I think about when I think about the San Francisco transit system, which I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's 3 different systems that don't really talk to each other, have their own budgets, their own problems, and as a result, transit in San Francisco doesn't work as well as it could. So similarly in ports, you have a lot of siloed, entrenched views from various parties that have different power dynamics in that system. And they've set up a very delicate balance that in some places does work. So if you topple that balance, are you suddenly going to empower certain parties and disempower others? That's the most likely outcome. I just want to stress and emphasize, I think it's really important. We don't have to start from scratch. There is a lot of thinking around this. So if you just put in a search engine, civic tech or community-driven tech, there's so many examples of where this works well and where it works badly and how to do it correctly. So I would encourage everyone to really take advantage of those resources and not think like, oh my God, this is a real problem. What are we going to do? How do we solve this? But educate yourself about what's been done before and what's worked and what might apply in this space. The Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution has a website, and we have a project page on that site that will lay out publicly the work that we're doing, the communities we're engaging with, and we're hoping to have regular outreach about the challenges we encounter in the creation of these communities, which are going to be significant.
For people who are technological experts, do you have a set of rules or a process that you would recommend they go through before they start answering these unasked questions?
That's a great question. So I think there are 2 and there are many to be clear, and I'm not necessarily saying that these are better than the others, but 2 that I have used in my past work. One is the Signal Code, which was put out by the Harvard Humanitarian Initiative, and that focuses on the collection and use of data in times of crisis. But I actually think that the rights it establishes, the rights-based approach it takes is something that can apply to anything. So it focuses on things like right to information, right to privacy, right to redress and retribution if something actually has gone wrong, like if harm has been realized, like whose responsibility is it to undo that and make it right. Another one is build with, not for. there's a website, I think it's buildwithnotfor.org or com, and that walks through that civic tech model that came out of the Chicago project that I mentioned in my talk. And that walks through some of the concepts that I went through, like how do you start with people, build for the best fit, and it really gives you more concrete examples of how to do that. When you have an idea, it's important right then to start doing all of this work. Now, it's not to say you can't be conducting your build in parallel to the creation of the community, but the accountability mechanism needs to start from the very beginning. That's just the way it works best.